I don't know. I'll tell you right now, you could not be happy because Steve has stolen part of my speech. I just didn't think.
Yeah, didn't need it.
All right.
This summer was crazy. Well, I was thinking about we're gonna try to start. It wasn't too bad. So far, now 2 people are on.
But they can't get it on YouTube.
And this is on Facebook Live right now, so you can watch it, and then later on tonight I will upload it to YouTube, so you can watch it. You can link to either one on our website. So if you want to watch this again, and you will want to watch this again. So. Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and. Okay. Turn both on? No, it's on. I got that on. I just haven't done a final sound check, so this is working. Okay, I'll put that off. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our third of the trilogy program. This for the summer. This is a third and final, but we still have things cooking. So there may be things coming up like in December, so we're looking at that. My name is Steve Myers. I'm with the Cedarville Area Historical Society, and I'm very glad you're with us. And for those who are watching live stream, howdy. So technology is great, of course when it's working, but and it seems to be working just fine. So tonight we have a very special program on the history of the Stephenson County Fair with respect to when the fair came to little old Cedarville. And I won't say too much more about it, but very, very interesting things. Our very own Susie Dvorak, who is a member of the society, happens to be a historian for the fair. Her role is fair historian for the Stephenson County Fair. So we have lots of talented people just amongst us, and you'll see tonight when she just fills you with all kinds of interesting facts and information. So without further ado, we are very happy to have her with us, and let's see, afterwards we'll have refreshments, so you can be about an hour probably, something like that. So you'll have a chance to kind of talk and fellowship and ask Susie lots more questions. I'm sure she'll have question and answer toward the end. So stay tuned. You can watch this, as I said earlier, on Facebook Live. So it'll be recorded, so you can watch it again. And then on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, you can also watch all these programs that we're doing. Easiest way to find them is just to go to our homepage and look for the links to Facebook and YouTube. It'll take you right there. So lots of information. So without further ado, please welcome Susie Dvorak.
Thank you. I want to thank the Cedarville Area Historical Society for inviting me to come and share some history of the Stephenson County Fair. I'm on my 9th year on the Fair Board, and I have been a fair historian since February of 2015. I've been researching a lot, and I wouldn't be standing in front of you if I hadn't found information in newspapers, history books. There are some record books that are at the Historical Museum in Freeport, so they've been very useful in finding the information that I need. So tonight I'm going to kind of go through some of the locations of the fair and kind of bring in little significant pieces of Cedarville along the way. And then we're going to hit the 1951 fair as much as I can, the knowledge that I have, because it was the only fair that wasn't held in Freeport. All the rest of them have been held in Freeport except this one that's held out here in Cedarville, and we'll get to that when I get there. So with all my research, I have got 43 binders of information at home, and this is an example of one of them that I brought along. It's taking up a lot of shelving space in my office, but it's nice to be able to find stuff so you have something to kind of write about, because I'm hoping to write a book someday. Not sure how soon that will be, but fully soon. So I'm going to get started. Back in 1854, and you have to think back, when I first heard that the very first fair was in 1854, I had no idea what were they doing with the fair in 1854, because they didn't have electric. I mean, that's a good thing for me, to have electric. And running water. I mean, I don't know how much running water they would have had back then, but there was a bunch of farmers that got together, and they met on February 25th, 1854. There was 150 farmers at the Stephenson County Courthouse, and they were talking about getting a society formed so they could share ideas, bring people in from different parts of the state to talk about their animals, their crops, any of the bugs that were in there floating around, whatever. So they wanted to find a way to get together to talk about those things. So they formed the Stephenson County Agricultural Society in 1854. They wrote up a constitution that included the verbiage that they wanted to hold an annual fair in the month of September or October. And they sold stock. It was $1 per share, and you paid $1 every year, or it was $10 for a lifetime membership. And I looked up on the list, and John H. Adams was 12th on the list for having one of those lifetime memberships, which was pretty cool. And the very first fair was held on October 4th, 1854, and it was held at the Alderman Steam Flouring Mill in Freeport. So if you're familiar with Freeport, I want to point at some of the streets here. The flouring mill is right here on this corner. This is German, which was later called Avon, and then Elk, right, east and west. And then north and south, this is Locust, and this is Blackhawk. And the little street right here is Beaver. So somewhere in this area, in the pasture, they brought their animals for a livestock show. They brought in machinery for kind of like the commercial kind of stuff that we have these days when we bring the tractors and stuff. They had their primitive machinery that they brought in and they competed. And they also had a blowing match, which was kind of cool. But kind of neat to see it because none of us saw that. So the bottom picture, you're probably wondering, this is the Stephenson County Courthouse, the very first one that was built. It was built in 1838 to 1840. The reason I have that picture there is because all the stuff that you would see in our home ec building at the fair today, which is your fruits, your vegetables, the flowers, baked goods, canning, any kind of sewing, quilting, any of that kind of stuff, baking, was held here in this building. Now, I'm not sure if it was just the first floor, if they used the second floor. There's not enough information to know whether they used both floors. And they also could have been outside because it was an absolutely beautiful day. The papers had all this information about how nice the weather was that day. So after this fair, they reached out to the community to find a permanent place for a fairground. And Dexter Knowlton had 5 acres of land and he did a 10-year lease. And they charged was $125 total for it. This one's hard to see, but this street right here is Lincoln Boulevard, and this is west. As you can tell, there's nothing out here but land. The cemetery is on this side over here, the Freeport Cemetery. This is Webster. And this would have been the fairground right in this little area right here. And they held fairs there from 1855 to 1866. One interesting thing that I came across was the Illinois State Fair was a traveling fair. It started in 1853 and traveled all over the central part and northern or southern part of the state. Had never been up this direction. But in 1859, they decided to hold it up here in Freeport. The only problem was you had to have 25 acres. You had to have room for 700 animals. And obviously, they didn't have enough space for that. And that's one location I have yet to find. It's south of Freeport, and it could be, I mean, Freeport wasn't as big as it is now, so I'm guessing they mentioned something about like a stone quarry, so I think it might be over by South Street on the south side of that. I'm not sure. I'm still trying to figure that one out. But that year they had $16,000 in premium money that they gave out. And the fair was held on September 5th through the 9th. And it was very well attended. And all the hotels were busy. People were camping everywhere. Wherever they could put up a tent, they were camping. The restaurants were very busy. I have a feeling it would have been really cool because I know what the state fair is like today, and I think there was like 50,000 people in the area. So it had to have been really, really busy. During this time, in 1861, the Civil War started, and they converted the fairgrounds over to Camp Scott. The soldiers would come, they'd get their training, they'd get mustered in, they'd sleep there. The animal quarters that you have during the fair was switched over to quarters for the enlisted men. The buildings were used for the captains and the colonels and all that. But it was kind of interesting, some of the stuff that I was reading, they only canceled 2 fairs, and that was the 1862 and the 1864 fair. They did have one in 1863, so I have a feeling people just wanted something to, because it was such a bad war with people dying, family members dying and stuff. So I think they might have had it just to have something to do. So after 1866, they had to reach out again to find some more land because their lease was up. So William Wright offered them 40 acres of land and it cost them $4,000. And, oops, wrong button. This is South Street in Freeport. And this is Walnut. And this is Locust. And they had 40 acres in here. When they started laying out their fairgrounds, they figured they had too much land, so they sold 10 acres to this Dr. Dupway. That's where the fire station is now located. But they did put in a track. They had a quarter-mile track for horse racing and buggy racing and things like that, which was kind of neat. Okay, so we're going to step away just for a moment because we need to talk about Taylor's Park, because Taylor's Park is very significant when we get to 1851 or 1951. John B. Taylor, he was a tanner. He had his business on the south side of town. His business was to make anything out of leather. It was boots, saddles, whips, you name it, he could make it. And all the stuff that he got from his processing, all the liquids and runoff and stuff, he would take to his park. And this was the layout of his park here. He put in a 1-mile track, and that's where he would spread this byproduct to kind of make it slick. And it was the fastest track in the United States at the time. He bought the land on December 9th, 1873 for $7,416. And he converted the whole thing. It was like a meadow before he had it. All these buildings were put up. I think this is where the exposition hall was. This is the grandstand and the announcer's stand, the judge's stand. And then all down the side here are stalls, and that's where they'd bring the horses. They'd line up their reserve a stall, and then when they had to go race, they would just walk the animal across and go into the track and do their heats. One interesting fact, in November of 1899, there was a really bad storm that came through the area, well, like tonight. A lot of lightning and thunder, and this barn caught on fire, and the embers burnt all this up. During the winter, John B. Taylor would store the buggies and carts and stuff, because he owned the trolley in Freeport at the time. And that was all gone. It all burnt up. So it's kind of a sad thing. So when I showed the grandstand and the announcer's stand, here's a picture of it from the ground. And this is a picture, the bottom one here is a picture looking down to the stands, which I just think that's a fabulous picture. And this is another one looking from the infield to into the stadium there. So the reason why I skipped here was because the state fair came again. And they had it for 2 years, in 1877 and 1878. They were very well attended. It was the most money the state association had as far as funding. They made a lot of money those 2 years. This is an actual book of that fair. My friend Connie Geider has the actual copy of that. I've made other copies so I can actually open and read it, but this is part of my fair memorabilia, and I'll talk about that at the end when we get there. In 1879, it was right after the state fair, so the association or society got together and were getting their fair ready. And they advertised and did all they could. They had everybody coming and going, getting things ready, and it rained. Well, like we have tonight, it rained. That's one of the things about the fairs. It always rains Fair Week. We always hear that. And it rained so bad that they couldn't pay their premiums out. Nobody came to the fair. The entries were down. It just wasn't a good time. So they were $2,000 in debt, so they ended up going bankrupt. So that was the last of that society had held for fairs. So the land was sold, and that was it. Until 1888, the Northern Illinois Agricultural Society, or Association, was formed, and they held all of their fairs at Taylor's Park. So they had plenty of room there. They knew with the state fair when it was there, they have plenty of room. They could have horse racing, include a lot of different things. These are two other items that are in my memorabilia display. The one on the left is a 4x6 advertisement card. It's actually torn in half, but when I fed it through my feeder, it put it together, so it looks really, really nice. And the one on the right is, it's just a flyer. It's a 8.5 by 11 flyer. So in 1909, John B. Taylor is in his 70s, and he had gone to the west side of Freeport to pick up some stray and some straw and some hay, and he's riding down Stephenson Street, and the horses get spooked, and they take off one direction, and he falls off, and he lands on his right arm, and he's laid up for several days, and he ends up getting blood poisoning in his arm, and he dies on August 26th, 1908, or 1909. And instead of willing the park to family members that were alive, it was willed to the St. Francis Hospital and the St. Vincent's Orphanage, only because they were the only entities in Freeport that didn't complain about the horse racing and all the gambling going on. So there was some dispute over that. I haven't really gotten into too much of that, but I need to look into that a little bit more. So they still hold some more fairs. Whoops, wrong button. So I don't know if anybody's familiar with this picture, but it's Teddy Roosevelt standing on a very sturdy table. I don't know how sturdy, but it must have been sturdy enough. But this picture is actually at the fairgrounds. This is taken from the grandstand down to the judges' stand. I didn't realize that till I was researching a little bit more. And this is another picture of him on the table. And these are a couple other pieces that I have from the display. The one on the right, my dad was downstairs looking at some of his antiques. We were trying to pick stuff out for the fair, and I looked at these and I said, "My God, Dad, you have no idea what you have." And I had to tell him the story, and he gave them to me so I could put them in my fair display. And the one on the left is a 6-inch ruler that I bought from a gentleman on eBay. He was actually lived in Freeport, and it's kind of one of my prized possessions too, because I don't have much of the old stuff that's mine, so it's kind of neat to have that kind of stuff. So one more fair is held after this in 1911, and the fair, or the Taylor's Park, is sold for $43,500 to the newly formed Freeport Park District. Now the Park District, when they take it over, they start tearing things down. They sold a lot of the buildings, and they were moved to different parts of Stephenson County, and they made a road out of the track, so what was Taylor's Park was gone. In 1918, the Farm Bureau is formed, and they start holding annual picnics at Taylor's Park. So all the farmers would get together and talk and have their picnic. In 1922, the 4-H clubs are formed, and they start showing their projects at these picnics. And then July 27th, 1923, the Ladies' Home Bureau was formed, and the ladies would help the children with their projects for the fairs, or for the picnics. And a lot of it was like the sewing projects, baking projects, and stuff like that. And I think the men from the Farm Bureau would help the boys, because a lot of the boys, I don't think there were too many girls that I've found for pictures yet that showed animals back then. But it was kind of a nice little trilogy that they had for that time of year. So I had to pick out a few more pictures of Taylor Park, because there's a few things I think we need to talk about before we get to 1951. So this is a picture of a drawing of 1939 of the park. And as you can see, it still kind of has the track around here. But the one thing that the Park District did, they wanted to have a recreation park. and they wanted to have swimming. So they dredged from here out to the creek, or the creek that leads into the pack, and then it was also there's a piece over here that comes in, so they could fill in this area with a lake and, well, and a couple ponds actually. I think they're all three of them are lakes. So the water's coming into the park now, and I haven't found anything before this of any flooding. So after this is when you start hearing about the flooding. But they had tennis courts, they had, somewhere in here, they had a music venue, and they had an auditorium here, a football field, and then the grandstand. And I think people remember that grandstand. I have a picture of one of those here in a moment. This is a picture of the lagoon at the time. Well, actually, I don't know when it was, but this is the bridge. If you go out to Taylor's Park, that bridge is there. That was built in 1919, so that's where the water came in on the one side. And then there's a second picture here where you can see it too. So judging from looking at the picture, it looks like there's a lot of water there. So I don't know. Right now when you go out there, there's a couple, when you drive in by these bridges, there's a couple like viaduct things. They're just kind of like built there, I think, to try to keep the water out. And I don't think it works very well, in my opinion. So in 1940, the Stephenson County Fair Association was formed, and they hold fairs until 1950 at Taylor's Park. It's the three things: the Farm Bureau, 4-H, and the Ladies Home Bureau. They all get together, and then you get with the Chamber of Commerce, and they decide to start holding these fairs, and they start getting a little bit bigger and a little more exciting. And as you can tell, this one here, I'll show you this first. This is that grandstand that was in that one picture. I think it's the same grandstand. I'll probably have to figure that out. And this was back in that meadow area. You can see there's a sea of tents all along here. I'm guessing this is where the animals were back along the back part back here. They put a silo up every year. The Freeport Silo Company put a silo up every year. And these pictures are from the Dwight Garnhart collection. I have a bunch of his pictures. They start in 1948 and go to 1967. So in 1951, I'm going to give you just a quick little tidbit here. January 15th, 1951, the fair announces, or the association announces their fair dates, August 22nd to the 25th. In July of that year, the normal rainfall for July was 3.16 inches for normal. July of 1951, they had 7 inches of rain that month, and I didn't find anything of where the flooding was, because you'd have to go paper by paper by paper to even find it, but this was a statistic that I found in the August papers. In August, the normal rainfall is 3.54 inches. So on August 8th, the evening of the 8th and the 9th, probably like tonight, they got 4 inches of rain. So you already have saturated ground and you're adding more rain. So flooding starts up north, because there was a lot of rainfall up north of here, and it came down through the pack. And on the 10th, the flood was recorded at 11.47 feet, which is a foot above flood station. I don't know if that's still the same these days. I haven't really looked that close to it, but it was flooded over there in Taylor's Park. There was they couldn't get in to put any of their stuff up, all the food vendors and things like that. They couldn't put tents up or anything. And they finally started talking about moving the fair. And the first place they thought of was the racetrack, the Freeport Raceway racetrack. The only problem was, that floods too. So they were thinking about using the top part, but then they realized they didn't really have enough space. And the biggest problem was they needed parking and they needed electric to run everything. So they were running into obstacles and just couldn't find a place to hold the fair. So on August 14th, just a few days before the fair, the week before the fair starts, they get 2 more inches of rain, and it was a done deal. So on the 16th, they decided to cancel the fair. And the mud was so deep that they couldn't put tent stakes in, and it would take forever for it and take a long time for it to dry out. So the 4-H and the FFA groups started talking about what they could do to hold just a livestock show. So they started looking around, and they ended up coming out to Cedarville. And that was held on August 24th. And I tried to find some maps that could kind of help us here. If I got it right, I think I'm down too far, or up too far. I think this is Cedarville Blacktop. And if you come up here somewhere is where the, it's called the Wood Lane Park, where it is right now, right in this area here. From the people that I've talked to that were in attendance of that fair, said that they only brought the livestock out here, and they showed their animals, and that was pretty much it. They had a lunch stand, but that was about it for that day. This is at Wood Lane Drive and the highway, and then all this area, from what they told me, this didn't, the subdivision did not exist at the time, so they had plenty of space in this area so they could hold their livestock show. And trying to find pictures. Okay, so I put it out on Facebook to see if I could get any bites on pictures, and I got nothing. I talked to people, and nobody had anything. So I went to the newspapers. I have a few pictures. They're grainy, but it's about the best I could do. The top one is Karen and Carol Rudy. They're from Freeport with their Holmsteins. The bottom one is Glenn Odie, or Otto. He's from Florence Station with his Hereford. And these are a little bit better. Frances Anderson, she's from Dakota, and the gentleman that's with her is M.E. Boyer. He was the chairman of the Rotary, and that's with her sheep. And the bottom one is Marlon Gom. He's from Pearl City. And Clarence Orth, he was the president of the Royal Youth. And I know a lot of people were part of the Royal Youth growing up. They kind of had a food stand out at the fairgrounds, and they may have been the ones that had the food stand there. I'm not real sure yet. I got to do a little more research on that. So in 1952, Albert and Henry Albertus stepped forward. They had 40 acres of land that they were willing to sell. They would sell the first 10 acres for $1 for naming rights. And on the top of our entrance here, it's got Albertus Park, home of the Stephenson County Fair. And the other 30 acres, they paid $10,300 for. And this is our current fairgrounds. It will be 70 years old next year. And so will the building right here. That's the first building that went up. That's the home ec building. So we're going to celebrate next year for the 70th year. But this building is at this entrance, and this is familiar. It's still the parking here. There were 20 tents put up, so I think it accounts for these here and the ones back up here. These were the ones where they had all of the animals, and I think the place that they showed everything was back here in the back part, back in this area. This is the old commercial building. It was built in 1953 before this fair was held. The silo is right here. It went up every year, and actually this year when I drove through, you can actually still see the dead grass where the foundation was, which was kind of neat. And the rides are all back in this area here. My dad, his folks were in archery, and he said they were set up back in this area, so I don't know, I'm guessing they were shooting away from the building. I don't know. I would hope so. And everybody's familiar with the Raleigh tent, so here's a picture of the Raleigh tent back in 1964. And then the top one, that's the home ec building, and then this is the old commercial building. And I think this is that Lion's Well that was there for the longest time. I haven't seen it there for a long time now. But you can see they had the tents down here yet. And this is a picture of my memorabilia display. I put a lot of different things in there every year.
we have, I usually put up pictures from the 70 years ago. So this next year, the 1952 pictures that I have will go up on there, up in this area. And then I have, there's books, there's trophies, anything that I can get my hands on. In fact, somebody brought me a bag tonight with more stuff, so I'm kind of excited to go through that. But I'm pretty proud of it. I'm hoping to get a little bit bigger next year because it's just a small one, and I finally got to have the whole length of the, it continued on this piece here. So it's kind of growing, so I'm kind of excited about it. But I bag everything up, box it up, take it home, and then it sits in my office all year until I bring it back out again. So I can open it up for questions if anybody has anything. It's quite a bit in a little short of time, but yes.
I have one. I'm new in town.
Yeah.
New to Cedarville. Somebody told me that Raleigh's, with the previous slide, they make boilers. Is that right?
Boilers.
I think there's a big
Raleigh's.
building in downtown Freeport that I saw said Raleigh's on it.
Yeah, it was usually medical
Was it medical
stuff that I can
Raleigh's
remember.
made pepper and vanilla and a lot
Yeah.
of things that they sold for the builder.
Okay.
Cooking supplies.
Then a comment, my hometown of Springfield, Ohio, was the founding of 4-H in 1902.
Oh,
Yeah, small town Springfield, Ohio.
wow, that's pretty cool.
So when you said 4-H, I'm like,
Yes.
Well, actually, Raleigh was international because they had a factory down in New Zealand during World War II.
Okay.
The county fair that was held in Cedarville then, was that the location where you used to have the old settlers, kind of,
I'd almost guess so because it seems like it was open.
26 there?
Yeah.
East.
I think it's
That's what Orville said,
open.
he was,
Old settlers was quite a while for,
yeah, we had a Legion meeting last night, and I invited them all tonight to this presentation, and Orville said, oh, I was actually there, I showed animals there. You, come on. So he didn't think he could make it tonight, but he said it was right next to the old settlers property there.
I remember in, when the fair, where the location is now, my dad was on either the fair board or the farm bureau board, and they built that first, commercial building. I remember going out there and watching them build that, and my dad worked on that. Some of the members actually did it themselves.
Well, it's a volunteer thing, honestly.
Yeah.
It's always volunteers, yeah. I know a lot of them put trees up too.
You mentioned that your dad had some of this memorabilia. Are you from the area? Was your dad raised here?
We both were in Freeport. We grew up, yeah. We grew up, do you know where the the visitor center on 20, Browns Mill Road? I grew up down by the river, and that's where my dad grew up. So, yeah, we're pretzels. Yeah. Proud of it, yeah. One of the other, yes.
What was the year you said the first one was, when it was first formed?
1854.
54?
54.
Okay, the reason I bring that up, it's interesting that they show the picture of Holloman's steam flowering mill. Well, Holloman, of course, was a direct opponent of John Adams. They were
Yeah, I was going to get to
fighting
that,
back and
yeah.
forth. And of course, Adams finally won out because Holloman died a young man, and Adams ended up marrying his widow.
Yeah, he died in 1866.
He died in 66,
Yep.
and in 1868, after much deliberation, the former Mrs. Haldeman married Mr. Adams.
Okay. And then I found in 1870 was when they sold the Halderman Mill. That was the first that I found. And that's how I found out. I didn't know where it was for the longest time, and I just happened. So when you're researching and you don't know what you're looking for, you go page by page by page in the newspapers. So in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, I'm going page by page trying to find anything associated with the fair. And I came across in 1870, I can't tell you the exact same date, I think I have it in my bag, but I found where they had the write-up in the newspaper where it was going to get sold, and they had the exact coordinates of where the property was. So I went back to the maps, and then that's when I realized that it actually says flouring mill right there. So it was a great hint that I found that I was just, you know, you find things on the strangest days and the strangest times, and I was very thrilled with that. But yeah, I was going to bring that up about the Haldermans and the Adams. Mr. Adams, I wrote down a few notes after I had kind of searched through some of my stuff. When the association was first formed in 1854, they had their executive group, the president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. And then each township in Stephenson County had 3 people. And John H. Adams was actually listed in 1854 as being one of those 3 people. In another interesting thing, when like today you have superintendents that oversee the projects that come in. They had awarding committees is what they were called. And John H. Adams was on the cattle committee in 1854. He was on the manufacturing committee in 1856. In 1857 and 58, him and Anna are both on there as being flour, in the flour category. And then in 1860, he's down for crops and grains and preserves and jams. As far as winning anything, in 1854, Anna had actually won for best or second best for quilts. In 1855, John was down for best 2-year-old gelding for his horse. In 1856, he got third best for another gelding mare. And in 1858, they got first place for celery and lima beans. And I don't know what kind of grapes these are. I'll spell it for you. They got second place, and it's CATAWBA grapes. Guadaba? I don't know what they are. And 1868, Anna got second place for cherries, first place for grapes, and second place for plums. And in 1869, she had the best woolen carpet. So it's something she would have probably had to make back then. So that was a couple other little tidbits that I found on that piece. Yes?
How did you get so interested in the fair?
You really want to know? When I was growing up, I was not a farm kid at all. My dad worked at Micro. He worked third shift. I didn't see him a whole lot. But we'd always go Kids Day, and I always look forward to Kids Day because he'd take us on the tilt-a-whirl. My dad's not a small guy. He's a big fella, and he could get that thing spinning so blasted fast that we'd get up dizzy and sick. And you never really looked to see what kind of shape he was in, so I can't imagine what he was like. But as I got older, I couldn't wait to go to the fair. It just kind of showed up, and we'd go. And when I when I graduated from high school, I discovered the season pass. And I had a car. So me and a bunch of friends, we'd get in the car and we'd go to the fair and just spend all day. And it was I just had so much fun with friends. You ran into people you didn't see very often, and I just love the fair. I can't wait for it to come. There's an adrenaline rush that gets going in you that I can't even explain what it is. I think it was 1987 was the first time I started volunteering out there. I sold milk for the DHIA group, and I worked at the hog house and the beef corral, and I've been working at the hog house since then. The other ones kind of had groups come in and start working for them, so I wasn't part of the groups at all, so I didn't get to work anymore with them. I worked probably since '88 in the home ec dining hall until it closed. So I'm a volunteer person when it comes to out there. It's just in my blood. I've been showing projects since 1986, I think, something like that. And this year, near and dear to my heart, I never thought I'd ever get to this point, showing all my projects in the home ec building. The gal that had it before us, she resigned, and I took it over. And it was the craziest week I've ever had out there. listening to people complain. And I work at the college, so you kind of know how to work with these people, and you talk to them, you know, what can I do to make things better? And I got through my week, and it was just a crazy, crazy week, but I've just been a fair person. I found out how to get on the board, and I think the first year I was on there was 2013, and I was elated. I never knew how to get on it before, but boy, when I got on, I was just elated, and I hope I can stay on, because I have an appointed position for the home ec chapters, and you could just get appointed every 2 years. If somebody else wants to get on, then obviously I'd have to get off and wait another term, but being on there, I can run the home ec building, and I'm pretty excited about it. Yeah. God help me if I was a farm kid. Boy, I'd probably have all kinds of stuff going on out there. Because I do go through the buildings and watch the shows and stuff, so. But I volunteer all over the place. I've sold tickets for rides, I've sold tickets for the shows, and taken tickets for shows. I've washed windows. I've done a lot of stuff out there, so.
I don't see Susie for the week before the fair, the week of the fair, the days after the fair. I just learned to live with her. She's gone.
Yeah, we have.
In the morning till 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah, we have meetings at 8 o'clock every morning, so I'm out there, make sure I be part of the meeting so you don't miss anything. I'm also a trained weather spotter, so I kind of ask my opinion on different things, and I'm kind of the standby for that.
Okay, cool.
So, yes.
Yeah, to close off the William Holden and John Evans story, they are now neighbors. They are buried within 75 feet of each other in the Cedarville Cemetery.
Oh, yes, 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 yes.
The former Mrs. Holden made sure of that in 1920 when she had his body moved.
Oh, okay, okay. Huh. That's kind of neat.
Jim, I have a question for you. You had this question too, about the name Holden. Occasionally, somebody wants to throw an R in there, and you see that in a lot of the newspaper accounts. Is that just a misprint? Holden all the way through, or is it Alderman?
Yep. And actually, really, other than his association with the mill in Freeport, the family is better known in the Savannah area.
And they're known as, is it Alderman there or Alderman?
I mean, frankly, I don't know.
I-
But both families came from basically the same area of Pennsylvania. But the one side ended up over closer to the river.
The research I found, it was an R. There was an R in it when they were in Savannah, because his brother's name was, I want to say Nicholas. And I think his name was Nicholas, was his brother.
Oh, the Aldermans.
Halderman.
Yeah.
Or Nathaniel.
Yeah, he had
Nathaniel.
there were several brothers in the family. I have a large collection of letters between Holden and his future wife and other members of the family that have been transcribed, but I've never been able to put them together in a coherent story.
Oh.
So it'll be up to somebody else. If anyone wants to try, run over to see me. I've got a lot.
I would suspect the name, the spelling on at the cemetery would probably be the correct one.
I don't know. It is a fascinating story. It is a fascinating love story between Holden and the second Mrs. Adams.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you for having me tonight. I enjoyed it. Hope you learned something.
Susie Dvorak, everybody. And I caught something. She said she was a fair person. I think she's an excellent person. Thanks. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Appreciate the great attendance. Even with the storm coming through, we weren't sure if we were going to get blown away or what. So yeah, I think we dodged some. some potential really bad weather. So you're welcome to join us for refreshments next door. And again, lots of information. I'm going to be watching this online because I missed a few things while I was trying to stream over there. So thank you again, Susie, and we'd love to have you back for even episode 2 when we come up with some more information. So thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next door.